All right. Welcome, everyone, to our next episode of No Guts, No Glory Live. I am joined by guest Nikki Larchar today, and she has such an interesting story to hear. And in fact, I just got a little taste of it, so I can't even wait to get all the good, juicy details. But welcome, Nikki, to No Guts, No Glory Live.
Thank you, Patty. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so Nikki is a president and founder of Define the Line, and she's revolutionizing sexual harassment prevention training so that individuals feel empowered to speak for themselves and each other. And we're going to get into Nikki's story in just a minute, but before we do, to everyone watching, please start a watch party so we can get this message out to all those who need to hear it. My teammate Casey is in the comments, so if you have any questions, she will be sending them my way. So please feel free to leave questions or comments as you're tuning in today. And so I am excited to get started and to hear Nikki's story. So, but before we do, Nikki, you are an entrepreneur, and I'd love to hear your story about how you came to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I think like most entrepreneurs, there was kind of this like aha moment of, okay, this is the time. This is when I'm going to start this thing that I've maybe been thinking about. So my business partner, Tina, and I early on had this idea of starting our own HR consulting firm. And I traveled to another employer with Tina. So we worked together, and then she's like, oh my gosh, I got this job. Like, come over here. We're going to learn as much as we possibly can. And then we can start our HR consulting firm. And I was like, okay, great. And it was just this kind of dream that we had that one day we were going to start a consulting firm. And then lo and behold, through the cracks of our cubicle walls, we were passing notes to each other and trying to figure out how we're actually going to do this thing. Neither of us had owned a company before. We didn't have any entrepreneurs in our family to help us. We really were just like bootstrapping, figuring it out as we went, took a few classes at our local small business development center, and then made the plunge full time. So we left our cubicle land and started our HR consulting firm together, which was fantastic. We're still together today. And that was in 2016. So now we're almost to our 5-year anniversary of owning and operating a business, but it was really just a dream that we had, and we just decided to go for it.
Oh my gosh. So did you have any clients set up before leaving, the job that you had? Had you done some pre-promotion or marketing or some networking to try to get some clients lined up?
Looking back, I wish we had, but we didn't. So we didn't even know what we were going to name our company at first. There was a couple months where we were still employed while we were like texting each other while we're at work, like, oh, we should do this. But yeah, we didn't have like a network of people. We really started from scratch. And looking back, I wish we had kind of a client list or at least some structure to it before we made the plunge. That's my one, I guess not one advice but that's one advice I would give to future entrepreneurs, is to do that legwork while you have a full-time job, part-time job, whatever that looks like, because I didn't realize how long it would take us to land our first client.
So the show is called No Guts, No Glory Live. Now, just becoming an entrepreneur, it takes a lot of guts. Would you say that that is maybe one of the gutsiest things you've done in your career?
I would say that's definitely top two. So becoming an entrepreneur obviously took a lot of guts, because I didn't know what I was doing. I had nobody around me that was coaching me through it either. It was like, figure out how you're going to even become a company. And obviously we found and networked with people that helped us along the way. But another kind of big monumental thing was, once we were doing our HR consulting work, we were about a year into kind of establishing our business. We came up with an idea for sexual harassment prevention training, and we decided we wanted to make a comic book, which I had never done before. I'm not even a writer. I don't write on my own. I hardly journal. And here we are like, we're going to write a comic book and we're going to create it. And if you saw my drawings, they're like stick figures. Like I'm not an artist either. So I think that would probably be the biggest, like, oh, it took a lot of guts for us to say, we're going to go after this and we're going to just figure it out as we go.
Oh my gosh. And so tell us more about the comic book. So the comic book is around sexual harassment. And then do you send the comic book out to corporations, or can corporations go to your site? We are posting the link in the chat, but can corporations go to Define the Line Comic to get the comic book? And then what happens from there?
Yeah, great question. So we do have the comic book where people can purchase it. It's a digital download and they can utilize it as their training resource. We developed it so that a small business owner could do this with a team of 10 to 15 employees and they wouldn't feel uncomfortable talking about sexual harassment. And we also wanted to also support larger firms. So we've helped companies with 1,000 employees. And for those folks, we're helping them develop training for their teams, or we're actually doing virtual training sessions with them that integrate the comic book into conversations around how to speak up for yourself and others when people are being inappropriate or they're bullying or there's sexual harassment that's happening. We really wanted to take a look at empowering employees to say and do something when they're faced with these kind of inappropriate things in the workplace.
Now, what gave you the idea to distribute this information? Because sexual harassment is a pretty big subject, and especially coming from the corporate world, right? It's a very touchy subject as well. What gave you the idea to create a comic book as a medium to distribute this sort of information?
Yeah, it was one of those kind of snowball effects. So it was right before the Me Too movement, like a few months. So we had seen a few headlines of some bigger corporations that were dealing with sexual harassment claims. So it was starting to become a conversation. Mm-hmm. And Tina and I were out for happy hour with some other entrepreneur friends and talking about sexual harassment. We started to share our own personal stories of when we experienced things and we didn't feel comfortable. And then the conversation went to, mimicking a little bit of the trainings that we had taken throughout our careers, or like, oh, they were a little cringy, like sticking into VHS into the VCR, it was just, they were awful. And the original idea was actually a coloring book, because we were like, we just need this to be, something fresh. It's going to keep people's attention. And coloring book, we started telling people like, oh, we have this really funny idea. We don't think we're going to go after it. And someone was like, you should try out a comic book. We're like, interesting. And then we were connected with a comic book writer. And we're like, oh, this could be a thing. And we just started telling people. One of our contacts, Rebecca, we met with her and we're like, we have this really crazy idea. We have no idea where to start because neither of us had written a comic book. And it just snowballed from there. And we were getting connections to all these different people that could help us along the way, that were comic book writers and editors and artists, and having these conversations and everything. It was one of those moments where it's like the stars are aligning. It doesn't make sense that we don't go after this. So that's kind of our story of how we even got to be comic book writers. I'm an HR professional. I have no anything connected to comic books other than I like to read them.
Now, what is the kind of feedback you've gotten from employees who have been through the training and have read your comic books? What are they saying?
Yeah, they absolutely love the format. So many people have been like, this is so neat, such an interesting and intriguing way of giving information. And then secondly, during our training sessions, and what this kind of evolved into over the last 3 years has been, the comic book is in and of itself innovative. But it's the conversations that we're having that are in relation to the comic book. The comic book is just the segue. It's the tool that we're using to have really candid and vulnerable conversations around what it means to be an ally in the workplace. And so the feedback that we're getting is that our trainings, because it is more of having a conversation, actually engaging the audience. Don't just click through a screen or zone out while you're watching a video, is that it's actually helping them figure out where they are as far as an ally in the workplace. How are they going to handle situations in the future based off of how they've handled them in the past? So people have a lot of great things to say about our training. Just recently, last week, we had somebody reach out and they're like, this was far superior than any other sexual harassment training I've ever taken. That was the best, hugest compliment that we could ever receive from somebody. And so every time now that I've had like one of those moments where you're like, should I be an entrepreneur? Is this what I should have? Because there are those moments of self-doubt. I'm like, no, like people need this. And we've got a few reviews from people that are really stellar. And those are the ones that, it makes it all worth it in the end.
Oh my gosh. Now, do you have any other supplements or any other materials to help supplement the comic book? So for example, NGNG, we've got, I think we have like 25 employees now. So how would you set up a business like NGNG with what you do at Define the Line Comic?
Yeah, great question. So we have a facilitation guide, which goes along with the comic books. And this was you read it from the page, it's our brains on a piece of paper, and it helps somebody like you, Patty, to have the conversations with your team and know how you can have some different activities and discussions around this particular topic. So we have the facilitation guide. We also do trainings for individuals who just don't feel comfortable talking about sexual harassment, which is completely fine. I sometimes am like, how did I get here? I talk about sexual harassment every single day now. But yeah, so we help in that way too. And then coaching entrepreneurs, business owners, HR leaders on their role and how they can either administer the training on their own or how we can help them develop something that's specific for their team.
So I want to go back a little bit to at the time when you and your partner were still ideating, going off on your own. And do you recall maybe some useful tools or training you did to help get you to where you are today? And what I'm trying to do here is just help those who are listening, who, are thinking about, going off and starting their own business or opening some sort of consulting firm. Like you said, it's where do you start? What do you do first? And I don't know that there's ever really a right answer, but there are a lot of really good answers as far as what some of the first things you could do.
Yeah. So some of the first things that we did that I'm so glad that we did is we partnered with our Small Business Development Center that's local. So these are across the nation. There's obviously the National Small Business Development Center, but there's one in Larimer County and in Fort Collins, Colorado, where you are, Patty. There's one here where I am in Florida, on the East Coast of Florida. But they were really great resources. They have free or really low cost training resources. So the first training we took was, so you want to start a business? It was really just like, okay, you have an idea and you want to start a business, but how the heck do you do it? So I love that group. Also, I would say networking and finding people. For us, we really valued groups that were specifically for women entrepreneurs. We found groups of women that were, either at the same level of us, they had just started out, or they were a few years down the road, or, 10 years down the road, and having those mentors and friendships that are, I like to call them friendpreneurs,
yeah.
Friendpreneurs that are they're in the thick of it with us. So they're like, oh, I just found out about MailChimp. Did you know that even existed? And you're like, what the heck is a MailChimp? And what does that do for my business? Which it helps you with email campaigns. But just having those relationships, so you're sharing data as you're all doing the same thing, and then having people that are a couple years down the road because they have insights to share with you. And that mentorship can be so vital. Even now, I look at individuals that are right there and with me, we're at the same time frame or even before, but those have been some of the most beneficial things And obviously there are so many trainings out there, so many different consultants that are doing incredible things. So, finding consultants that know what marketing is and how to do it, because there's a lot to learn. And you're, as an entrepreneur just starting out, you've got to wear every single hat and just figure it out. You're diving into QuickBooks and you're like, I don't even know how to send an invoice. I'm going to send my first invoice. Great. Also, what are all these finance reports that I'm supposed to be aware of? And what the heck is it telling me? So I think it's, just finding all those. And honestly, we did a lot of we love free resources that are coming from reputable sources, but really leaning on those trainings and what's out there, webinars, things that I love watching videos, anything that I can kind of gobble up, podcasts, etc.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is such good advice. You talked about QuickBooks. It's funny because if you are looking at going out on your own, start watching those QuickBooks training videos now. There's a ton on YouTube, some really good people. They're accountants, right? And obviously they're trying to sell their service, but I can't tell you how many QuickBooks videos I've watched. But it's true, it's free training. You get the answer you need, right? Because I was in the same place. I'm like, reconciling? What is reconciling? I took accounting 101 like 20 years ago. So I totally relate. Yes, be prepared to just to have to go through a lot of, learnings along the way. But it is kind of fun. And now I'm like, all right, well, I feel like I'm not an expert yet, but I'm getting better.
I don't know if anybody, well, there are obviously QuickBook experts, but I don't know if any entrepreneurs ever get there.
So do you ever still experience some fear or hesitations? And is there something that you do to help overcome some of those fears? Because, right, this last year, of course, 2020 changed for everybody, and we all had to pivot and make decisions. And there was no playbook, like what's the right move and what's not. But how do you sort of, I guess, tap into your instinct and make a decision or get over any kind of fears or hesitation?
Yeah, I love that question. And honestly, as an entrepreneur, there is a lot of fear. There's a lot of imposter syndrome too. Like, should I still be doing this? Am I the person that should be doing this? And so actually in my office, in any office I've ever had, but here in my home office, I have my wall of love notes. They are notes that either somebody has emailed me. So I'll print out an email where somebody's saying, thank you so much for that training. Our team really loved it. Or I have thank you notes from colleagues and friends that are like, you are such a badass woman. Like, you need to keep doing this. I love you for this reason, and this reason. And so I have my wall up, and I do have those moments where I'm like, should I be doing this? Can I do this next thing? And I'll look up there and be like, here is this wall of people that believe in me, that know that what I'm doing is important. And this moment I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm the right person, or I'm not sure if I should take this next big leap. And it's my little, like, yes, you can. My inner thoughts, they like take over my inner thoughts, and they're like, yes. It's my little cheerleading squad on the side of my desk there. So, I recommend it to everybody to put up. I even wrote a love letter to myself, which sounds really strange, but I would highly recommend it to everybody. I wrote myself a love letter. I sealed it away for 60 days, and I read it 60 days later because I didn't remember what I had said. And now that's up on my wall too. And it was therapeutic to write it out, to think of myself in that really positive, like, you are doing incredible things. And then when I have those moments of doubt or fear, I can reread it and say, Nikki 3 months ago had, she knew what she was talking about. And so I got this. I can do this.
I love that so much. So everyone watching, write a love note to yourself, seal it in an envelope, and then open it up. What did you say, 3 months, 6 months from today?
However long you think it'll take you to forget what you wrote.
Oh my gosh, that is such good advice. I just love that. Well, as we wrap up today, do you have any final advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, people who are out there thinking about making the move, but there's so much hesitation that comes with it, right? Because it is scary. You really are you've got to jump in with both feet, right? You have to be all in. I think, like you said earlier, right? It's okay to do a ton of prep work, outside of your normal 9 to 5. There is a ton of time to get that stuff done. You've got to be willing to work after hours or on the weekends on it, but it can get done. And, a little bit each day adds up at the end of the month, or the end of 3 months, whatever it might be. But any advice you have for those thinking about taking the big leap?
Yeah, I think you said it so well, Patty. There is some prep work to be done. Looking back, that is what I say to new entrepreneurs. I wish I had just taken a little longer of a pause before we made the big leap to do it full time. But I also think that there are people that will just wait and wait and wait and have this really great idea, and they could make this business work, but they're stuck in that kind of, I don't know, they're just stuck in fear and they don't take that leap. So I think there's a balance of both. And so figuring out that, yes, you need to have as much information as you need to, but you will never have something that is absolutely perfect. Go with good enough. It's good enough. This email is good enough. This product is good enough. We can make it better in the future. We can redo it once we get down the line, but it's good enough. We have to hit the send, publish, start it, whatever that little button is, even if it's something that's in your head. But making that leap so that you actually get to be an entrepreneur, because it is really fulfilling and amazing and wonderful. And reaching out to your network is huge. Finding your people, finding your network, finding others that can help you along the way. That's my last little closing note. Just find your friendpreneurs and keep them close.
It's so true, and it's such a close community. And I think entrepreneurs love helping each other, because we know it's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of lessons to be learned. There's going to be some failure along the way, but there will be wins too. And so I totally agree with that. There's that saying, your network is your net worth. And I agree with that 1,000%. So I did see that you have a free event coming up on April 15th. Will you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so we are hosting a free session on harassment prevention for HR and leaders, business owners. It's 45 minutes of just really, it's like a brain dump. It's everything that I do in training sessions so that you can just take away from that session and do something in your organization to help move the needle towards preventing sexual harassment. So it's on April 15th. It's open to anybody and everyone who wants to join. And there are really good key takeaways, and it's not a sales pitch, because I hate those trainings. I hate those webinars. I get on, I'm like, yeah, I got my notebook ready, and then they're just selling. And I'm like, no. So I don't do that at all. It's all good information, good takeaways.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Nikki. That is our show for today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and encourage everyone to go out and do something that takes guts today.
Thank you so much, Patty.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.